So that's just goofiness. This is one of my favorite stories of the day right here. Right here. If you know this, this is Candace Owens. Candace Owens works for Ben Shapiro at the Daily Wire. Ben Shapiro is probably the most well-known conservative, neoconservative political commentator on the internet. Obvious Jew. And so Candace works for him, and Candace came to support Kanye when he came out with the White Lives Matter shirt, when he said the stuff about Jewish people on Tucker Carlson. She was the first one to say, hey, that's my friend. He's not crazy. He doesn't have a mental disorder just because he's talking about Jewish people. So, leave him alone. Let him have his free speech. And so then the big awkward question now is, how does Ben Shapiro handle Candace Owens? Does he fire her because she's clearly standing up to the Jewish mafia? Well, if he fires her, then it looks like he is just abusing his power as a Jew to fire anybody who says something about Jews. So he's kind of in this catch-22 situation. And so I put out a video a couple days ago saying Candace Owens holds the key to the upcoming blacks versus Jew war. And that war is real. It's very real. And you saw just in the last month, Kanye, Kyrie Irving, and Chappelle all get roasted by the Jewish powerful elite for saying that Jews run the media, and not just the media, many of the institutions in the United States. So my opinion was that Candace Owens holds the key to all this, because she is going to be asked, what side are you on? Do you believe that there is a Jewish mafia that basically blackmails people, whether reputationally or financially, into doing their will? Or is that all just a crazy conspiracy theory? Well, here we go. Listen up.
Dennis Prager, when I called him and he wanted to discuss the situation with Ye, I didn't even let him get a word in. I just yelled at him. Honestly, I was very harsh. I'll tell you what I said to him. I said, I'm not playing this game with the Jewish community again. Because people were starting to say, well, if Candace doesn't condemn Ye, then she too is anti-Semitic. It means that she's also anti-Semitic by association. I said, I'm not playing this game with you guys again, is what I said to him. I said, you've wrongly smeared me and libeled me as anti-Semitic in the past. You were there for that, Dennis. You were one of the lone voices that stood up for me. When BuzzFeed intentionally pulled out a clip of me to make it sound like I was defending Adolf Hitler. And I said, despite that, I was gracious and I was understanding, and I made amends with people to help them understand what that conversation was actually about. I said, but the second time you guys are going to come at me with smears of anti-Semitism, no, I'm not doing it. I'm not playing the game with you guys.
There you go. So I was very happy to see that. And look, she said him by name. She called him out by name. You Jews, you're not going to do this to me. And she could have been more assertive. She could have pointed to more experiences outside of just what's happened to herself. These other celebrities that very clearly are suffering crucifixions at the hands of the ADL and all the other Jewish mafia leaders. It was interesting to hear that she already had a background in this suppression, that they had already framed her once to appear anti-Semitic. And so this is what they do. It's known. It's across all the different industries. If they can't destroy your reputation publicly, they go after your finances. If they can't get to you financially, they go after your family. It is mafia-like tactics, and it's got to stop. And the only way it will stop is for public figures, influential people, to stand up to it and to expose it. Now, obviously easier said than done, because I don't have much to lose. Worst that happens to me is I get fired from my job. Hopefully I find a new one. But I'm not like a celebrity. I'm not going to lose millions of dollars and endorsement deals and all this other crap. You saw what happened to Kanye. The guy was worth $2 billion, and then a couple of days later, he's worth $500 million. The guy lost $1.5 billion in a couple of days because he chose to stand up for Christians. And it's not even just Christians. It's everybody in America who is being pushed around by a very, very small ethnic and religious minority. 2% of the American population is Jewish. 2%. But then when you go look at the percent of people who own, or I should say run, the higher education institutions in America, the Ivy League schools, it's like 50% of them are run by Jews. You go look at Hollywood, the entertainment industry, all of the record labels, all the production studios. Do you think the Jewish representation on top of all of those is 2%? No. Once again, it's more like 25x that. Go and look at who runs all of the major financial institutions. And that's the one that they've been in for basically as long as time. That's their true gift. They're extremely intelligent people. And, similar to Asians, they have a propensity to use math, but it's accounting math, concepts of accounting, to leverage that skill and create puppet strings over other people where they can pull on their finances and use that as blackmail to get them to behave the way they want them to. That's the truth. So I said Candace Owens is going to be the key to all this. She has to be very publicly outspoken that I don't care that I work for a Jew and that he's very powerful. He can fire me, he can cancel me if he wants to, but the fact that Jewish influence in all of our major institutions has, at this point, become unacceptably powerful, that's what I got to say. That's what I got to say. And I'm proud of her for doing it. It takes a lot of courage to do so. We'll see what happens. If they come down on her with the same wrath that they came down on Kanye, she'll be looking for a new job soon, and they'll dig up something in her past, something that's really embarrassing and all this other stuff. They'll call her crazy. They'll call her anti-Semitic. They'll try to destroy her as a human being. So that's an unfolding story that we all need to keep our eye on, because let's just be honest, the white people have failed. I'm saying this as a white guy, as one of the rare white guys who will actually still stand up for my race. For some reason, that's a problem, by the way. If you're white and you stand up for your race, you're a white supremacist, and that's evil. If you ask a black person, hey, you're black, is it important to you to stand up for your heritage? Is it important to you to stand up for the black community? And they say yes to any of those questions. That's kind of expected. Like, yeah, of course black people stand up for black people. Of course black people want to grow black communities and keep them safe. Okay, so why can't a white person say the same thing? That was one of the red pills that kind of really turned my mind off of everything that we see in front of us just being fake and two-faced lies. All of the news you see on TV about racial tension and whatnot. The moment the whole Black Lives Matter scam was like, what can you say? Tons of money was pumped into it to popularize it and to push that narrative of it's okay to say Black Lives Matter, but to suggest that white lives matter, that's racism. It just became so publicly obvious that I don't think people couldn't notice. And so America's in a very interesting place right now in terms of how it's going to respond to this ongoing, unnecessary racial conflict that's going on. It's completely unnecessary. If the news just reported that a crime took place and made it agnostic of skin color, and same thing for the victim, just report on the crime, report on the facts. Maybe no, I shouldn't say agnostic. You should say the race of the person who committed the crime. You should say the race of the people who were victims of the crime. But you shouldn't say, and this is why we need to do X about all X people. That's what's currently happening. Whenever a young white kid goes and shoots up whatever school or some kind of mass shooting, and look, as a white person, I'll fully admit the data is very clear. Mass shootings tend to be performed more often by white people, and especially young white males. It's like 90+% of them are young white males. So if a black person told me that statistic, I wouldn't sit here and go, are you racist? Do you think all black or all white people are mass shooters? You must hate white people. That's not an appropriate response. If somebody shares with you data that is true, it's the FBI's data, so you either think the FBI is racist and bigoted, or you just have a personal problem. But anyway, when the news is covering these stories, we should acknowledge the frequency at which we see these patterns of, okay, we reported 10 violent crimes last month. 8 out of 10 of them were committed by one race, and the other 2 were some other race. The problem is where the public misses things is that they think the violent crimes that are reported on the news represent all violent crime. And that's not true. The news gets to choose which violent crimes they report out on. Right? So when you see, the liberals were actually accusing Fox News of this the other night, I saw. The liberals were mad because Fox News would show these violent crime clips, and the majority of them were committed by black people. You know, pushing people into subway cars, stabbings, purse snatches, raiding the CVS's and looting. And the liberals and CNN were like, Fox News is clearly trying to paint black people as having more criminal-like behavior than white people. And it's like, yeah, but that's true. They're not trying to paint anything. They're portraying an accurate representation of what the crime statistics say. And so like when you start seeing these patterns of very clear hypocrisy, very clear manipulation of the facts, that's the red pill, politically speaking. Politically speaking. So that's Candace Owens. Keep an eye on the blacks versus Jews, because that's we need the black people to help America out here on this one, because white Americans have been whipped into such submission, such white shame and white guilt, that they're afraid to defend their own race at this point. It's sad. It's pathetic. If you're white, don't let yourself be one of these people. There's nothing to be ashamed of about being white. You have no reason to be ashamed at all. No reason to even be ashamed of what your ancestors did, because they're going to try to use the slavery card on you. They're going to try to say, well, aren't you ashamed of what your ancestors did owning slaves? Guess what your rebuttal is? Aren't you ashamed, assuming you're talking to a black person or whatever, because that's the comparison they're trying to make, is you as a white person have a unique and greater amount of shame that you should be held accountable for than black people. Because that's what we're talking about in slavery. Whites and blacks is the history of slavery in America. Well, guess what? Those black slaves that white American people bought were sold to them by black slave owners who sold their own population into slavery. So when we're talking about ancestors and reparations, perhaps we should go back to the beginning of the supply chain and say, hey, you people who decided that you should sell your own people into slavery, maybe we should punish you and take reparations from you. Maybe you should be more ashamed of what you did than the people who simply bought the labor resources to get their job done. Just saying. And I don't want to make it sound like I'm rationalizing slavery, only calling them labor resources. But the thing is, you can't compare modern culture and how it functions in terms of business, in terms of racial relations, to how society functioned in 1700. And for all millennia before that. Slavery has been a part of human history since the beginning of recorded time. Slavery built the pyramids. I mean, slavery is the backbone that all civilized countries were erected upon. So there's nothing uniquely shameful about the slavery that happened in America. There's nothing uniquely shameful about being white. These are all lies that have been shoved down with full force everybody's throat. And like, you didn't even have a chance to try to cough them back up and provide your argument or rebuttal. It's just, if you object to any of these things, you're a bad person, you're racist, you're a bigot, you think slavery was fine, etc. So you got to be intelligent enough and researched enough to have arguments to swat away people who try to morally blackmail you like that. Can't let that happen.